A blessed Sunday to us. This interesting episode in today's gospel reading is actually something that we have to also consider in the sense that these ploys or, strategies are really happening in our times. And I'm talking about what it is to be sandwiched. No? Kabalo mong unsay sandwiched. Kanang mahulog na atas tunga-tunga ba? Muratag palaman o kung hamburger pa na kita mo'y beef nga naayduha ka bread. Because this is a very beautiful image of today's gospel reading. Jesus was again attacked by the Pharisees who had already like something, gikapuya na sila, kaya wamang gid sila mahimo ni Jesus. So they asked the Herodians. And take note that the Herodians are the ones who actually are pro-Romans. But then the interesting thing here in our gospel reading is, while Jesus was squeezed in the middle, Jesus was able to make his way out by practically giving a very beautiful response to the question that is practically very, murag ganang planted nga question ba, murag sabto nagyud lang daan, daan sa iyang kaugalingon nga pag-formulate. Now, what is interesting here is the Pharisees who asked the Lord about the census tax, and Jesus asked them to show them a coin. The interesting thing about this is the Pharisees are against the Romans. But why were they having coins in their pockets if they are against the Romans? That's an interesting, funny thing about it. No? Dili gani sila muhikap niya, sila na hinuoy ning tunol sa coin. Diba? It's so ironical, no? But then the most important point here rests on what Jesus said. Then pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, because in the coin, there is the image of Caesar. So pay the tax. Jesus actually was talking somewhere in the same gospel about paying the tax. No, because that is the responsibility of every citizen, not just during his time, but also in our times. But then when he said, and give to God what belongs to God, he is focusing on the very beautiful image of the human person. Because we are created back in Genesis in the image and likeness of God. So kung ang coin, ang sinsilyo, naa diha ang larawan ni Caesar, kita, we are living coins. We are bringing the image and likeness of God. And not just image and likeness of God, as Christians, we are Christ's. No? Christ is in us. We are showing Christ. But dear sisters and brothers, it is not just enough to end the argument here. When Jesus said, give to God what belongs to God, meaning to say, our very image and likeness, our dignity, it's not enough to say it. Because the next question is, how are we going to give back to God what belongs to God? And here comes the answer provided to us by the second reading today. The first letter of Paul to the Thessalonians, for your information, is the very first document of the New Testament. Sa wala pa gisulat ang mga ebanghelyo, before the Gospels were written, the first letter of Paul to the Thessalonians was already there around the year 50. In other words, there was already the Old Testament, but the New Testament was not yet complete. But it is the very first written document. And in today's second reading, there are the so-called 3 theological virtues that we have learned in our catechesis: faith, hope, and love. This is the first ever mentioned, mentioned for the first time in the New Testament literature. And this is where we can start understanding how to give back to God what belongs to God. Our image and likeness, our dignity as human beings should be the starting point when we labor with love. No, nganong labor man yun ng love? Nganong labor man? Because it is not easy. There are so many different trials that we have to respond to. Maglisod ta usahay, pero malipay usab. Pero daghang mga kalisdanan nga adunay kalambigitan sa gugma. Now, the work of faith. What is the work of faith? It is not just simply professing the faith, but it has to be shown, even in times when we are put into certain conflicts. And finally, hope. No, kay tulo man gyud ning theological virtues. Di man gyud mawala ng hope. Naaga ni faith, na I hope, na gyud po'y love. But the hope is always forward-looking. And this is where we are able to see ourselves progressing or digressing in such a way when we are responding to the very challenge of giving back to God what belongs to God. Because this is where we start. Faith, hope, and love. They're very big words, but we can also use this and understand in little things that we can do. When we love each other, despite the pains, together with the joys connected with loving a person, and then showing our faith in the many different, manifestations that we can do, bisan usahay sa atong inconvenience, and then the hope that only we can actually have a grasp. And take note of this. Christianity is not complete without hope. In other words, bisag daghan tang experiences of despair, ma-discouragement ta, if we have hope, we endure to the end. Amen.